rescued me so I could stand and see. I am a child of God. You split the sea so I could walk right through it. My fears were drowned in perfect love. You rescued me so I could stand and sing. I am a child of God. I am a child of God. I am a child of God. Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Pastor Andrew, and I welcome you to our Bible conversations. We had some technical difficulties, so we really didn't come in exactly at 7 p.m., but we're here nonetheless, and we're continuing with this discussion on what the scientists have discussed about, Darwin's theory of evolution, creation, intelligent design. So those are the things that we've been talking about. And one of the things that we want you to do is to bear with us, because this is a little, concentrated, if you will, of a discussion. And sometimes, people may say, oh my goodness, there's too much science discussion here, but bear with us. We're just providing you with a foundation of what many scientists, have really tried to put out, that, in essence tries to disprove, that God does not exist, or, behind all these created things, there is an intelligent being that is behind all creation, behind all the things that you see. So the first thing that we have to do is talk about what the scientific theories have been put out over the centuries, and then we will get to talk about what the Bible really says. So today, bear with us. We're going to be talking about the topic of evolution, Darwin's theory, and so on and so forth. And without further ado, I am going to welcome Pastor Anna, who's going to join me, and we are going to be talking about the topic of apologetics. And the topics of apologetics really talks about, your being able to defend the faith. Are you able to intelligently and cogently defend the faith? If you are a young person, you're going to school, and people are just throwing these scientific theories at you that try to discredit the existence of God, are you able to stand on your 2 feet and be able to defend your faith in Jesus Christ? So the first thing that we do is to provide a background. That's what we've been doing, and it's taken a while, but bear with us. So last week we discussed how macroevolution is the central feature of Darwinism. Okay, for those of you who don't know, Darwin was really the scientist who advanced the topic of evolution, and in a nutshell, he talked about how we have our origins in apes or stuff like that. Right. So we would talk about the central feature of Darwinism, and we also discussed that there were 2 basic tenets that you'll find in the theory of Darwinism. All life forms are related back through time to a common ancestor. Okay? All life forms are related back through, or they can be traced back through time to a common ancestor. And the process that brought all life forms into existence from a common ancestor is natural selection acting on random variations. Okay, so that's what we were talking about last week. But let me take a moment to welcome you, Pastor Anna.
Thank you.
Are you ready for this scientific discussion?
Yes.
Some people may really say that, oh, you guys are talking so much about science, but I think we need to have a background.
Yeah.
Because most of the existing theories have been produced by scientists, and some of them really are false in a sense. They've been disproved.
Right.
But when, like, you remember how we were just talking a while ago, and you said that, when you took, the science classes, no one dared to challenge the theories,
Right.
because they were presented as fact.
Right.
But as time has gone on, people have really discovered that these theories are faulty.
Right.
Okay. And that's what we really want to talk about. So we started to discuss that there is considerable evidence that the case for macroevolution is unconvincing. Okay. Is unconvincing. So, evidence against the claims of Darwinian evolution is what we want to continue talking about today. There are claims that have been made by Darwinists or those who subscribe to Darwin's theory. They have made certain claims. I'm going to talk about some of the claims, and Pastor Yana is going to talk about some of the claims. But let me just start off, actually continue. If you didn't see the video last week, go and take a look at it. And, ask the Holy Spirit to really keep you focused so that you can make the connections that we are discussing here. But there are claims that we started talking about, claims that Darwinian theorists make, okay? But today we want to talk about the claim from embryology, okay? The claim from embryology. In other words, looking at the embryo and making conclusions about certain things, okay? Darwin believed that the most convincing evidence for common descent could be found in embryology. Darwin believed that the most convincing evidence for, common descent could be found in embryology. He claimed to find remarkable similarities between how embryos of different species developed. And for this, idea, he relied on another scientist's, German biologist's theories or reasonings. He relied on Ernst Haeckel. Who was a German biologist, who reasoned that the development of embryos in the womb mirrors the larger evolutionary process of nature. That the embryos in the womb, when you look at embryos in the womb, you could relate that to the larger evolutionary process of nature. Now, by this, he meant that an individual embryo would develop in a pattern similar to the evolutionary development of the species. For instance, because humans are thought to have evolved from fish. Did you know that? Humans, I always had problems with that.
I know.
Because humans are thought to, by scientists, humans are thought to have developed or evolved from fish. A human embryo might develop as a fish before developing human characteristics. Do you follow me?
Yes, I do.
Now, to make his claims, Haeckel made drawings. Okay, Haeckel made drawings, and the drawings that Haeckel made, he made them of various embryos, such as the chicken, frogs, and the fish. Haeckel wanted to show that the early embryos of different species look very much the same, but then become not noticeably different as they develop. I came across this diagram, and I don't know if some of you who are part of the Liberty WhatsApp group, I sent it there. I don't know if I don't know if it will do justice if I can show it here, but I want you to reference, if you're part of the WhatsApp group of Liberty Apostolic Center. I sent the diagram that Haeckel came up with, and I want you to reference. It's almost like an hour-shaped, diagram, and he put, at the top, he put, the human embryos, the different human embryos, and as they go through, in the middle, he showed that they took on a certain shape, and then at the end, at the bottom, they all took on different forms. So Haeckel made drawings of various embryos that were made up of chickens, frogs, fish, because he wanted to show that the early embryos of different species look very much the same, but then they become noticeably different as they develop. You follow? He came up with this diagram, and that really was carried on by Darwin. Darwin also, started embracing Haeckel's, scientific, claims.
Right.
Notice that when you look at this diagram, notice that the second row was portrayed by Haeckel as the earliest stage in the development of 8 embryos. The embryo of a fish, the embryo of a salamander, the embryo of a turtle, the embryo of a chicken, the embryo of a pig or hog, the embryo of a cow or calf, the embryo of a rabbit, and then the embryo of a human. That's what he, by the way, drew, and also notice that the 4 of these listed embryos, the 4 of them on the right, they're all mammals. However, Haeckel's contemporaries, were not convinced. So they started accusing him of skewing his drawings to make the embryos appear more alike than they really were. But there was another major problem here. Darwin had claimed that embryos are most similar in the early stages. By the logic of his argument, Darwin's argument, the earliest stages should be the most similar. The earliest stages of the embryos should be the most similar. But in reality, these embryos actually start out looking very different from each other. The human embryo does not look like the embryo of the salamander at the very beginning. The embryo of a rabbit does not look like the embryo of a fish. Then they converge, they converge somewhat in appearance somewhere as they go through the stages of development. They converge, somewhat in appearance, though not nearly as much as Haeckel portrayed in his drawings. So as the embryos continue to develop, they become very different. Again, they start off very different. Somewhere in the middle, as they develop, they kind of tend to look similar. And then as they continue in development, they are completely different from each other.
Right.
Then there was a biologist called Rudolf Raff, R-A-F, Rudolf Raff. Rudolf Raff called, Haeckel's pattern the developmental hourglass. Okay? Rudolf, Raff called Haeckel's hourglass-shaped, diagram the developmental hourglass. But listen to this. Haeckel and Darwin took the most similar stages, the middle part of the development of the embryo, and arbitrarily considered them as the beginning stages of development. And as we have already noted earlier, the embryos start out very different. That is the reality. Haeckel's drawings greatly influenced the popular culture of his time because they were reprinted many times. As a matter of fact, many textbooks, many science, biology textbooks, even published after the 2000, just not too long ago, that's about 26 years ago, textbooks that were published after 2000 continue to use versions of Haeckel's drawings as evidence for evolution. Now, there were scientists, there are scientists who've come up and they have refuted Haeckel's theories or his drawings. Those a geologist called Casey Luskin. Now, Casey Luskin was a geologist, who with a PhD in geology from the University of Johannesburg. Now, Casey Luskin wrote an article, and this article was entitled, Haeckel's Fraudulent Embryo Drawings Are Still Present in Biology Textbooks. Luskin put out his article in 2015, recently. So modern day scientists are finding fault with Haeckel, and therefore they're finding fault with Darwin.
Yes.
Modern scientists are starting to discredit, the theory of evolution. Okay? But the problem is that these fraudulent theories have continued to be published in science textbooks even today. Right. And in these, the textbooks of today, science textbooks of today, Luskin lists textbooks that still use Haeckel's original drawings or highly similar versions of them, being used in science textbooks as illustrations, and they misrepresent the early stages of the embryo. Faulty science.
Right.
That is what science has built on. Even the late evolutionary biologist. There was evolutionary biologist Stephen J. Gould. Stephen Gould said this. Stephen Gould said Haeckel had exaggerated the similarities by idealizations and omissions. In other words, he too found fault in Haeckel's scientific drawings. The information they provided, he says, it was exaggerated, meaning it was faulty. Hmm?
Yes.
Haeckel also, in some cases, simply copied the same diagrams over and over again. And many scientists today they refer to that procedure, as being fraudulent. In an interview for Science, another scholar by the name of Michael Richardson, he put it bluntly, and this is what he said, and I quote. He said, "It looks like it's turning out to be one of the most famous fakes in biology." Michael Richardson, a scholar, says that Haeckel's scientific drawings look like they are turning out to be one of the most famous fakes in biology. So can you imagine all these years we were, by the way, for me, I can remember that diagram that I posted on the WhatsApp group. When I was, I loved biology when I was, in high school. But I now recall in my biology textbook, those Haeckel's diagrams were the ones that were shown, but they were fraudulent. So this claim of using embryology, the study of embryos of different species, as a way of, claiming that, evolution, is really valid, has a problem to begin with, because even the drawings are not truthful.
Right.
You get it?
Yeah. I'm going to add that.
Mm.
When we talk about, that there are arguments that exalt themselves above the knowledge of God.
Mm.
And you can look at it that this argument is something that tries to
Exalt
itself above the knowledge of God.
Mm.
But I think the other thing this sets up for science is the idea that human embryos, are not life. That's why many people can argue for abortion, because they'll say, well, an embryo, if it looks like a fish or if it all starts off as the same,
they're all
then
embryos.
It's not.
They're things.
They're things. They're not life. And so these are the problems when you have these arguments that are false. That's what science today will try to use to justify things like that, like abortion, because it's just an embryo.
You have a point there. I didn't even think about it like that, but yeah. But anyway, what says you now that you jumped in? Could you shed a light on other claims that have been made by science?
Well, I think the other claim that we all pretty much know is the claim of similarity with apes. So there are many that will point out the DNA of humans and the DNA of chimpanzee is 95 to 98% the same. Now, this depends on who you listen to.
Right.
In addition, the argument is the body structure, including the muscles, the bones, and organs, are also similar. So to those that subscribe to Darwinism, this is basically decisive evidence that humans evolved from apes. That's how they justify that humans, right? Now, what's interesting, though, is that though there are similarities, they are not evidence for evolution. Okay? Design is also able to explain them, Designers often make different products using similar parts.
Right.
like you make products.
There you go. There you go.
and we use there's efficiency, because they're similar things. So why couldn't the designer of nature use some similar DNA and body structure for otherwise different organisms as well? That's the question we're asking.
Right.
And this isn't an exclusive argument for evolution, even though some people try to make it, but it's not an exclusive argument. It can also be used for intelligent design. For example, there's a person named by Tim Berra, and Tim Berra used pictures of various models of the Corvette cars to demonstrate how fossil records offer proof of gradual evolutionary change. And you can see this in the evolution and the myth of creationism from publishing. And in that he wrote, if you compare a 1953 and a 1954 Corvette side by side, then a 1954 and a 1955 model, and so on, the descent with modification is overwhelmingly obvious. He's making the argument with cars. Like, you can see the evolution, basically, of the design of the cars. But here's the problem. There's one thing. Corvettes did not descend from other cars, okay? They were designed by intelligent engineers.
Intelligent, designers.
They look alike because they were designed to look alike with modifications. That's how the designers made them. The designers made them to look alike.
Right.
With some different modifications. And so, ironically, Berra proved the opposite of what he was trying to prove.
So he what do they say? He stabbed himself in the foot.
Yeah. So what he ended up demonstrating instead, that similarities may result from common design rather than common descent. So he didn't prove that cars descended from each other. He just proved that design can, there can be similarities in design. And one more thing Berra had illustrated was microevolution, not macroevolution. So the Corvette did not transform into a bicycle or into an airplane. He simply illustrated the change within a species or within, the same kind of,
design.
Vehicle. Yeah, design.
Yeah. That was, that's, yeah. So we are not descended from apes. People have tried to really, when God created us, he created us in his image.
Right.
That's what the Bible says. We were created in God's image. Yes. God did not create apes in his image. God did not create cows in his image. God did not create, a snake in his image.
Right.
Those were all created beings, but human beings were created in his image. So this idea that we came from apes, even science is starting to disprove it, But anyway, let's move on to another scientific claim, the claim of infinite time. Have you heard of it? The claim of infinite time. Now, Darwinists see time as the magic bullet for evolution. Darwinists regard time as the magic bullet for evolution. They believe that given enough time, given enough matter, given enough time or chance, anything can happen.
Right.
But there are several reasons that I'm going to share here, and there are several reasons why this claim of time just doesn't work. This claim of time doesn't work. First of all, I will start with the first reason. The Big Bang means there is limited time. Darwinists argue that matter and time have existed forever. So, with an infinite amount of time, they reason that evolution was entirely possible. Now, in their minds, everything could exist through evolutionary means if you only gave it enough time. But the irrefutable scientific evidence for a universe with a beginning, the Big Bang, has slammed the door shut on this Darwinist claim. Not only can scientists conclusively say that the universe had a beginning, but they also say they know when it started.
Right.
And the start time agreed upon by scientists isn't nearly enough time to evolve the complex life forms that Darwinists themselves said it would take. You follow?
Yes.
Then there's the reason that time is the enemy of evolution. Now, there was a scholar by the name of James Tour, T-O-U-R, James Tour from Rice University. James Tour is widely regarded as the greatest nanochemist, on earth. James Tour from Rice University. He's considered as the greatest nanochemist on earth. Now, nano refers to materials on an ultra small scale, very small scale. Now, James Tour says that time can be the enemy when it comes to organic synthesis, which is the making of new compounds from starting materials. Many of the chemicals needed, such as carbohydrates, which cells need for the energy of life, begin to decompose almost immediately after they are formed.
Oh, wow.
Did you know that? Many of the chemicals, like carbohydrates, begin to decompose almost immediately after they are formed. So James Tour says that unless someone stops the process of decomposition by storing them at temperatures as low as minus 80 degrees centigrade, some of these will degrade within hours.
Wow.
This is one of the world-renowned nanochemists. In addition to this, even if they are frozen, they might only last for a few months. They will not last for years. They will not last for millions of years. So without freezing, the new chemicals disappear as quickly as they come into existence.
Wow.
You can look up James Tour's YouTube presentation, Discovery Science. You know, the origin of life has not been explained. That's the title of his, documentary, if you will. It was put out on July 5th, 2019. But this scientist, this world-renowned nanochemist, he came out and disproved what the Darwinists were trying to advance. You get it?
Mm-hmm.
Then the other the other reason here is random processes do not know how to do it again. Now, Dr. Tour goes on to explain that even if random processes somehow succeeded in miraculously creating a carbohydrate or other necessary compound, the random processes do not know how to do it again. Which tells you God has to be behind all of it.
Right.
There is no intelligence within randomness. I repeat, there is no intelligence within randomness. So it cannot be left to chance. Things cannot be left to chance. It requires an intelligent mind behind it to repeat the action again and again and again. Go ahead, Pastor Anna.
And I mean, another thing that speaks against Darwinism is the claim to have produced life. You know, so in 1924, we have this Russian biochemist, and his name was Alexander Oparin. And Alexander proposed that living cells arose gradually from non-living matter through a sequence of chemical reactions. That makes no sense. I'll say it again. He had proposed that living cells arose gradually from non-living matter through a sequence of chemical reactions. And so Oparin and Haldane suggested that really the Earth's early atmosphere consisted mainly of methane, ammonia, hydrogen, and water vapor. That was their argument. And so they went on to suggest that in such an atmosphere, a natural energy source, such as light, could have produced a reaction to form the chemical building blocks of life. Which makes no sense. In other words, they were saying that these would have organized themselves into increasingly complex molecules, such as proteins. In turn, these eventually would organize themselves into full-fledged cells. So that was their argument. But in 1953, Stanley Miller and Harold Urey conducted an experiment to test the theory.
To test
this theory,
Oparin's theory.
Yes.
Okay.
If you get so, so the idea was to stimulate the primitive atmosphere on Earth, theorized by Oparin and Haldane, and then see if they could indeed produce simple organic compounds. Now, this is what they did. They boiled water.
Okay.
And then they circulated the steam with a mixture of ammonia, methane, and hydrogen past a 50,000 volt spark. So they put a spark between it before cooling and collected it into a container at the bottom. So this is what they did.
Sounds like mad scientists.
I know. Sounds like one of my experiments I did in science.
Yes.
So when they examined the brown substance, they found a few of the 20 amino acids that form the building block for proteins. Now, this experiment was widely advertised as evidence, that scientists had demonstrated the first step in the origin of life. However, by 1980, most geochemists had concluded that Earth's early atmosphere wasn't what Oparin and Haldane had assumed. Instead, the early atmosphere likely consisted mostly of carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and water vapor.
So their scientific theory was discredited.
Yes, because it was based on a premise that wasn't true. They made an assumption that wasn't true. So the Miller-Urey experiment could not produce amino acids from a realistic mixture of gases. And this is what Jonathan Wells had shown. Now, there was another problem with the experiment.
This is Oparin's experiment.
Yeah, this is another problem with the experiment. This Serbian physicist by the name of Ivan Draganic demonstrated that other scientists subsequently confirmed that at least some oxygen had to be present in the early Earth's atmosphere. So there had to be some oxygen. And so, basically, had Miller and Urey included oxygen in the test, it would have ruined their experiment because oxygen is destructive.
And we just breathe it.
Yes. As illustrated by rust, which is oxidation. Though we require oxygen to live, we need oxygen to live.
Our bodies require.
Yes, our bodies require special adaptations to manage it safely. and this presence of oxygen otherwise prohibits the development of organ compounds. It's amazing. Think about that. Wow.
I think all of the things are just amazing. For me, they continue to point to God.
Yes. Yes.
A higher being behind all of this.
Yes.
While oxygen is destructive, God has designed it that it's what we need
to live.
To live.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And although many school textbooks continue to circulate the idea that Miller and Urey demonstrate how life could have been produced from condition in the Earth's early atmosphere, most scientists actually now know that they did not. Okay? And their experiment is actually really irrelevant.
Discredited.
Yes.
Discredited.
Yes, discredited.
Now, so the other scientific claim of many gradual transitions. That's what I'm going to talk about, the claim of many gradual transitions. Now, according to Darwin, all organisms trace their lineage back to a common ancestor through an unguided process of slow and gradual transformation that took place over millions and millions of years. Darwin believed that such transformation did not happen by sudden leaps, but by numerous successive slight modifications. And you can, if you want to read about Darwin, you can, his publication is out there.
Yeah.
Charles Darwin, on his publication is On the Origin of Species. That was published in 1964. You can always pull it and read it. Now, according to this theory of gradual transformations, we should expect to see a steady flow of organisms blending smoothly into one another with countless transitional forms. Darwin himself said this, and I quote him. He said, "The number of intermediate and transitional links between all living and extinct species must have been inconceivably great." That's what he says in his publication that I just told you about.
Yeah.
So, if we look at crabs and birds, for example, the differences are so significant that we should expect to see massive numbers of transitional forms.
Right.
Yet the fossil evidence for such an inconceivably great number of transitional links is missing, is utterly missing. Now, to his credit, Darwin conceded that this absence was a big problem for his theory. Now, if a theory is argued but it doesn't have evidence, what does that make it?
Yeah.
It's discredited.
Right.
There's no credit.
Mm-hmm.
If something does not have evidence, there's no credit. If you take a case to court
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have evidence,
Right.
will your case stand?
No, it won't.
So Darwin himself conceded that the absence of evidence to support his theory was not there, or caused problems. Now, here's what he said about this. Why then is not every geological formation and every stratum full of such intermediate links. Geology assuredly does not reveal any such finely graduated organic, gradually graduated organic chain. Darwin went on to say that he considered this the most obvious and gravest objection which can be argued against his theory. However, Darwin was convinced that paleontologists, people who study fossils, paleontologists, people who study fossils, would eventually find the missing link. Then that's what he said. Now, since the publication of Darwin's book, which is roughly about 150 years ago, scientists have found a staggering number of fossils ever since. But what has not been found is that time are the transitional forms Darwin's theory claimed. The time that transitional, species would take on transitional forms. That evidence nobody has found it. So what we're going to do in our next discussion, we want to move closer to biblical evidence.
Yes.
What does the Bible say? We've really spent so much time giving you a foundational explanation of what different scientific claims that have been made, and some of them have been made to almost try to discredit the existence of God.
Right.
To discredit that the earth came into existence by God's own creative power.
Right.
And so people started putting out all these theories, scientific theories that have gone on for years. To this day, some of them are the basis of science.
Yeah, so teach.
But one by one, one scientist discredits another. So in our next conversation, we will look at, some of the biblical evidence. We spent so much time talking about, scientific claims. Now we want to move closer to the Bible. What does the Bible say?
Right.
So that's what we're going to be talking about next time. So, Pastor Anna, what should we reflect on this week?
So in your journal, we want you to write something down that stood out to you today from Bible conversation. So write that down in your journal. And then also, what pieces of evidence did we talk about that argue against Darwin's theory of evolution? We gave different pieces of evidence that actually discredit Darwin's theory of evolution.
And if you missed them, you can just go back and look at the video to, refresh your mind.
Yes.
Then we want you to apply, some of what we've talked about here today in your own life. First of all, what scriptural evidence is there against Darwin's theory of evolution? We want you to find 2 or 3 scriptures that dispel evolution and write them down in your journal. We want you to find 2 or 3 scriptures that dispel evolution and write them down in your journal. For example, Genesis chapter 1 verse 1. It dispels the theory of evolution. Okay? But there are many scriptures that you come across if you search the scriptures you will find so many scriptures that dispel evolution. We want you to go in there. We've spent so much time putting out these scientific claims that have been made, and over time they've been discredited. But we also want you to start turning to the Bible. Mm-hmm. They are scriptures that actually dispel the theory of evolution. So find them, write them down in your journal. Secondly, evolution claims we are similar to apes. Now, find scriptures related to our creation and write out an argument that men did not evolve from apes, and make a case for creation. Find scriptures related to our creation and write out an argument that men did not evolve from apes, and make a case for creation. Make a case for creation. These are the things that we want you to put into practice. This is how you begin to make a case for the faith.
Yes.
Okay? Scientists are busy making their cases, which one after the other, they're being discredited. Mm-hmm. But with you as a believer in Jesus Christ, can you make a case? So how do you make a case? You start by finding scriptures in the Bible that relate to our creation, and then you write an argument that men did not evolve from apes. Make your case about creation. Amen?
Amen. Our Bible reading this week is a psalm. We're reading Psalms chapter 21 to 25. So that's what we're reading. And we want you to write down a couple of verses that stood out to you when you read. And then just take some time to quiet yourself before the Lord in prayer. Meditate on those verses. And write down anything that comes to mind as you meditate on those verses that stood out to you. So that's our Bible reading. Psalms 21 to chapter 21 to chapter 25.
Okay, so, Pastor Troy here asked, the claim of many gradual transitions. The claim of many gradual transitions. Yes, Pastor Troy, that you wrote that correctly. The claim of, according to Darwin, he claimed that all organisms trace their lineage back to a common ancestor through an unguided process of slow and gradual transformation. That the species, that all different species, over millions and millions of years, they went through gradual transitions, changing, from apes to this, to that. So that is really the idea, so you are right, absolutely right. So we want to thank all of you who've been, following. This has been pretty intense science. If you really hang in there, we are taking you somewhere. Yeah, so you may have been sitting back there saying, "Oh, these people are discussing science." But we were trying to really give you a background of some of the scientific claims that have been made that actually try to discredit the things of God.
Right.
So we're now going to start making transition into the Bible, biblical, evidence that talks about, how things came into existence,
right.
From God's perspective, So we want to thank all of you for being here, all of you who are here, even those of you who stayed in the background. May God bless you in being in the background. We hope to see you in our next video. Please do like this video, share this video. I know it's full of science, but it is full of material that we're going to need that will help us make a case for creation.
Right.
Amen?
Amen.
Amen. So I am Pastor Andrew.
I'm Pastor Anna.
And we are Liberty Apostolic Center, and we are located at 225 Main Street in downtown Pawtucket. So we meet every Sunday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So come join us if you're in the area. Come celebrate Jesus with us. And then on Wednesdays, we're here online. And we have our Bible conversations. And then on Saturdays, we do have morning prayer. We start at 8:30 all the way up to 10 a.m. So come spend some time before the presence of God with us. And we hope to see you there. Again, thank you so much, Pastor Troy. May God bless you for posting all these reflective notes. And we hope to see you in our next video. God bless you and keep you in perfect peace. Until next time, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.